everyone seems to agree, even Mr. Three Steps Behind, Senator John McCain, that there is no choice left in the matter. But that won't make it any less painful, nor will it make it any less possible for whomever is elected president to not raise taxes, when the already deficit-strapped government assumes up to $1 trillion worth of bad debt. Our third story in the countdown, the collective us will soon be the proud owner of even more dangerously diseased debt, about $3,000 on each of our hands, $7,000 each for your taxpayer. But Senator McCain says, quote, raising taxes in a tough economy isn't patriotic, it isn't a badge of honor, it's just plain dumb, and I'm not going to let that happen. The only fair question is, how can McCain truthfully say this mess won't involve some kind of tax hike? President Bush, gracing the nation with a second appearance this week, announced the government rescue plan, the biggest intervention since the Great Depression, along with a warning, quote, anyone engaging in illegal financial transactions will be caught and persecuted. Maybe a little late for that, sir. With taxpayers stuck paying the bill one way or the other, it's another perverse triumph for the companies that helped us reach the biggest mess since the Great Depression. Those companies' mammoth losses being given now to every man, woman, and child in the United States. A mortgage in every pot. Let's turn now to the Washington editor of The Nation, Chris Hayes. Good evening, Chris.
Hey, Keith.
It's hard to overstate how enormous this bailout will be. I mean, it's a hurricane-sized bailout, but there's not much agreement yet on how much would be offset by tax increases, how much would be added to the deficit. But regardless of how this turns out in specific, in general, how could any presidential candidate truthfully say this will involve no tax increases?
It's hard to say that. I mean, there's a few easy calls in this, right? Extending the Bush tax cuts never made any sense. It certainly doesn't make any sense if we're taking out $1 trillion in bad debt. Restoring the inheritance tax would be a good idea. And there's other creative places you can find revenue that aren't going to hurt working people who, it's true, probably can't afford a tax increase right now. But, you know, one idea that's been floating around, England has a stock transfer tax, right? Every time you sell a stock, there's a 0.25% tax on it. If we did that in the U.S., that would be $100 billion. And there's no evidence to suggest it's destroyed English capital markets. So there are places to find the revenue, and we're gonna start seeing those pretty soon.
If this somehow did result in no tax increases, is there any way to overstate the wildly high, utterly irresponsible amount of extra debt that a future president would be plunging this nation into?
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty maddening to watch this game get played over and over, in which Republicans take office, run up the debt, run up the deficit, and then when Democrats come in and say, well, we want to do some spending on social investment, we want to get people health care and stuff, all of a sudden the Republicans are models of fiscal probity, and they say, no, we can't afford that. No, not at this moment. I mean, it's absurd. Look, we're going to have a lot of debt on our hands, but actually, as a percentage of GDP, historically, we're still okay. We're nowhere near the highest levels we were in the 1980s. And what I worry about is that kind of those naysayers coming in when someone turns around and wants to do something like, for instance, provide health insurance.
The other political implications now of what we've seen relative to this election, did the election turn this week, and irretrievably so, or could we all be ignoring this issue 3 weeks from now?
Well, I certainly hope not. I mean, we've kind of gone through a few of these cycles, right? There's a crisis, there's a lot of coverage, and then everyone says something's solved, and we go back to talking about, you know, the internecine conflicts on the Wasilla City Council, you know, board or whatever. But I think this, I would imagine, my instinct is that this is going to play out over long enough time, the sums are big enough, and the importance to the real economy are big enough that it's going to be very difficult to return to this absurd trivialia we were mired in for a few weeks there.
Although, you know, if your pastor used to be involved in witch hunts in Kenya, it may sneak through, as it will at the end of the hour. But the history of each candidate during the build-up to the point we're at now, and you could say the build-up started 2 years ago or 25 years ago.
Yeah.
Are people actually going to take the time to look at where John McCain was in 2000 and 1995, where Obama was in similar proportional stages in his career, on the things that led to this? Do they understand the economy well enough to pin them in their correct positions?
That's a really good question. I mean, opacity and complexity are the rogue's best friend in this whole enterprise. And at this point in the campaign, John McCain and Barack Obama, to a certain extent, can say anything, right? You got to look at the records. There's a few real concrete things you can look at and see where they come down. John McCain supported President Bush's idea of taking everyone's Social Security money and putting it into Wall Street, right? Trillions of dollars into the same firms that have now gone belly up. That doesn't look like such a good idea. He's got Phil Gramm by his side, as you have mentioned, who is a slavish devotee of deregulation at every turn. So the record is there. The question is, will he be able to kind of pull a hustle in which he suddenly recasts himself as this crusader against Wall Street excess down the last 6 weeks of the campaign?
Well, but you can see it in the debates. One of the questions has got to be in one of the debates. Right. All right, Senator McCain, which member of the cabinet is in charge of the economy? Right. Just pick the chairman of the blank, 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 and see if he can get it right. That would also be a confidence-inspiring moment, I suppose.
Yeah, that's right.
Chris Hayes of The Nation, and it is the SEC, right?
Yeah.
Thanks, Chris. Have a good weekend.
Thank you, Keith. You too.